Good morning, Fast Forward students. This tutorial is going to go over this Intro to Scales assignment and how to complete it. Your first step, as always, is read this text. And I really describe what scales are. And even if you think you know what scales are, if you've got some background in music, you probably have an idea about what a scale is. Read my notes. I've got sometimes a unique approach on thinking about and teaching scales. And if you have done some scales, you'll probably learn some new things. Um, If you're new to scales, hang in there. I think all this will make sense by the time we get started with the assignment. But do read all of this. This talks about, just kind of what a scale is. And then there's three main scales that we're going to work with on this assignment. And a scale really is defined as the spacing in between all the individual notes in the scale. So most of the scales that we think about when we think about traditional scales are 7 notes long. Um, and they repeat, right? And so when you get to the seventh note, it can start over again with the same 7 notes in a row. Um, you can start a scale on any note, but what makes a scale, um, it's what gives a scale its identity is the spacing between each of the notes, right? So once you get started, how far apart are each of the notes from the previous note? The major scale is probably the one everybody's most familiar with. I think I'm going to have some examples so you can listen to these as we go down through the list. But this is the spacing here, and I've kind of shorthanded it just so you can kind of remember. Whole stands for a whole step, and another word name for whole step, if you remember from the intervals assignment, is a major second. And then a half is short for a half step, and another word for a half step is minor second. So the step pattern or the interval pattern for a major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Or I'll just say whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay? And you, like I say, you'll recognize the sound of this scale when you get going. So many songs use the major scale for their melody. The next scale we're going to talk about is the Dorian scale, and it's one of the minor scales out there. Traditionally, I think a lot of students don't learn this one right off the bat. Usually, people don't start learning this one until they get into college or start studying jazz. But I really think it's a better first minor scale to learn. Actually, it's used more than I think people realize in music. And its step pattern is just a little bit different. Still just made it completely out of whole steps and half steps. But it's kind of symmetrical. If you look, it goes whole half, and then there's 3 holes, and then half whole. So if you played it forwards or backwards, it would be the same step pattern, which I have always thought that's kind of a cool feature of the Dorian scale. Not too many scales are symmetrical forwards and backwards like that. And then finally, the third one we're going to talk about is the Mixolydian scale. It's got a fancy name, but it's actually also pretty darn common and also not one that is traditionally taught in the beginning. But I think since it's so commonly used, we should check it out. It's really similar to the major scale. The only difference being these last 2 steps are switched. So in the major scale, it ends with whole half, and in the Mixolydian scale, it switches that and goes half whole at the end. But otherwise, they're exactly the same. So only 1 note difference. And then finally, there's kind of 2 different ways to go on a scale. There's ascending and there's descending. Ascending is going up from low pitches up to high pitches, and descending is going from high pitches down to low pitches. So let's get in with our assignment. I'm actually going to have you program these scales into Audio Tool. And so what we need to do first of all is open up Audio Tool, and we're going to create a new session. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the studio. And we are going to create a new project. And make sure and save it first thing. I'm going to put your name on it. So it'll be Ryan Conger and underscore, and this is the scales assignment. So call it your name and scales. Hit save. And then you also want to invite me as a collaborator or an editor so that I can check your work. So go to project and go to invite. And then type in fast forward music just like that, and then I should be listed as an editor down below, and then you're going to hit save changes. Okay. Now we're ready to get started with the setup. We're going to use a new instrument for this assignment, and it is under the synthesizers category over here on the side. It's the second one in, and it's called the Pulviserator. Got a real fancy name. But click on that and just drag it over. It's a synth, and it's probably kind of scary looking when you first look at it. Lots of knobs, lots of buttons. We're not really going to get into all of what it does for this assignment. Instead, what we're going to do is just load a preset sound. So there's a lot of different presets that you can just load where it will automatically turn the knobs in a certain combination to give you a certain sound. If to open up the presets, if you two-finger tap on the device, you'll see the third option down is preset, and then go to load. Okay? And then over here on the left, you should see a list of presets. And we're going to use, on my list, it's the very first one, but just in case it's not for you, just search for piano. And you can see it just applied by preset. Otherwise, if you see piano on the list, just click on it once, and it might take a second before it comes over here, but you'll know it's loaded if down at the bottom in the center it now says piano. As you might have guessed, it's a piano-like sound. It's not quite like a piano, but it's kind of close. Let me just show you a little example so you can hear it. If you two-finger tap on it, also you can do this show software keyboard. Bring up this little piano kind of looking thing, and then you see these letters here. These are your letters on your keyboard pad, so you can actually like play the notes, right? So it's a good way to kind of like listen to the sounds. So you can close that, and then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to create a note track, and I think it should happen automatically, but Audio Tool has recently done some updates, and it's now creating them automatically when you load an instrument. If you don't look down here and see Pulviserator and notes, then to create a note track, just go back to your device and two-finger tap and select create a note track. Okay. And we actually need 3 note tracks for this assignment, so go ahead and do that twice if you already have one, and if you need to, you can do it 3 times in a row, and you should see notes, notes, notes. And now you've got your note track. And so that's it for step 1. Step 2, I'm going to show you how to actually program in the scale, so tune back in for that one.